There's a specific kind of person walking through modern society, someone you've definitely seen, someone you may even be. They laugh at the right moments, nod politely, keep conversations light, and look fine from the outside. But inside, it feels like a funeral that never ends. This video is about them. About the people who feel dead inside yet keep smiling anyway. And here's the unsettling truth. These people are not rare. They are everywhere. They are in classrooms, in office chairs, behind cash registers, standing in line at the grocery store. They post photos that look warm, balanced, stable, yet feel absolutely nothing when they press share. Psychologists call this phenomenon emotional dissociation, but that phrase is too soft, too clinical, too far from the disturbing reality. Because what's really happening is the collapse of inner life. While the outer performance runs smoother than ever, you're watching a human being who has silently shut down, but whose social instincts are still functioning like an autopilot. They don't stop smiling because smiling keeps other people from asking questions. Smiling protects them. Smiling hides them. Smiling prevents collapse. But why does someone end up here? Why do some people look alive but feel hollow, numb, and disconnected from every emotion that used to matter? The answer is painful. It starts when their real feelings become too expensive to show. Maybe they grew up in an environment where emotions were dramatic, annoying, or inconvenient. Maybe they were punished or mocked simply for being human. Maybe they learned early that sad gets ignored, angry gets rejected, but fine gets accepted, fine gets praised. So they built a mask, not a dramatic mask, not a theatrical one, a perfect, subtle, believable one. The kind of mask you build when you realize no one is coming to save you. The kind of mask you build when vulnerability becomes a losing game. The kind of mask you build when life teaches you that authenticity is dangerous. Over time, the mask becomes a habit. Then the habit becomes a personality. And eventually, the personality becomes a prison, quiet, polished, socially flawless, and emotionally dead. But here's the darkest part. People who feel dead inside often don't look depressed. They look functional. They look strong. They look stable. They are the ones who always help others, who never complain, who seem unbothered. This is why they go unnoticed. This is why no one asks. This is why they never break. Because to the outside world, they are the definition of control. But on the inside, their emotions are flatlined, not dramatic, not explosive, just gone. You don't see chaos. You see silence. And silence is harder to detect than pain. This is the psychology of someone who has shut the door on their inner world, but still performs perfectly in the outer one. This is the psychology of someone whose body is alive, but whose spirit is exhausted. Someone who feels dead inside, but keeps smiling so no one ever notices. You can always recognize them if you know where to look. Not by their face, that's perfect. Not by their voice, that's steady. But by the delay between your question and their answer. It's that tiny, almost invisible moment where their mask slips, where the smile freezes, where their brain searches not for the truth, but for the correct response. The one that keeps the peace, keeps the image intact, keeps everyone from asking, "Are you okay?" Because the truth would ruin everything. And they know it. People who feel dead inside don't collapse. They function. Functioning is their superpower. They know how to show up, how to perform, how to be the version of themselves that's easiest for everyone around them. They don't want to disappoint. They don't want to burden. They don't want to explain why the world feels colorless, or why mornings feel heavier than nights, or why I'm fine is the biggest lie they tell, and the one they tell best. So they smile, not because they're happy, but because they're trained. Trained by life to suppress. Trained by childhood to hide. Trained by society to stay positive. Even when positivity feels like a foreign language, they can no longer speak. And here's the darkest part. They've been doing it for so long they're scared that if they ever stopped smiling, if they ever let their real emotions slip out, they wouldn't know how to put the mask back on. They've built a reputation around being strong, and strength becomes a prison when you're not allowed to break. Inside, the emotional numbness grows quietly. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispers things like, "Don't bother them with what you feel. They won't understand. You're supposed to be the stable one. If you crumble, everything around you will crumble too." So they swallow everything. The frustration, the fear, the exhaustion, the guilt of not feeling anything at all. And they replace it with a practiced expression. A soft, polite smile that says, "I'm okay. Please don't look deeper." Because being seen is their greatest fear. But being invisible would be worse. So they live between those two extremes, desperate to be understood, terrified of being exposed. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They agree to things they don't want to do. They give advice they can't follow themselves. They encourage others to take care of themselves, while slowly neglecting every part of their own emotional life. They're not lying to you maliciously. They're lying because it feels safer than the truth. The truth requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires trust. And trust requires energy. Energy they simply don't have anymore. People who feel dead inside aren't hopeless. They're just tired. Tired in a way sleep can't fix. Tired in a way vacation can't heal. Tired in a way that looks like apathy on the outside, but is actually self-protection on the inside. They smile because it's the only part of themselves they still feel in control of. There's a moment quiet, invisible, when a person realizes they can't remember the last time they genuinely felt anything. Not joy, not excitement, not even sadness, just nothing. But the world doesn't slow down for numb people. It doesn't ask if you're okay. It doesn't pause to let you stitch yourself back together. It demands performance. It demands the mask. And so they smile because feeling nothing is their problem, but being fine is their responsibility. People assume emotional numbness is a dramatic collapse, but in reality, it's subtle. It starts with small withdrawals. You stop reacting to things that used to spark you. You respond to good news with, "Nice." You survive the day instead of living it. You laugh because others laugh, not because anything is funny. And inside, there's a coldness like a room where the lights still work, but nobody lives there anymore. The most tragic part, no one notices, because the smile still works. The voice still sounds normal. The performance is flawless. These people learn to mirror emotions rather than feel them. If someone is excited, they match the energy. If someone is sad, they soften their tone. If someone is angry, they stay calm. They become emotional chameleons, not because they're manipulative, but because it's easier to imitate feelings than confront the terrifying truth of their own emptiness. And the world loves them for it. They're so stable. They're so easy to talk to. They're always calm, always composed, always dependable. No one realizes that emotional stability can be a disguise for emotional starvation. Inside, they feel like ghosts maintaining a body they no longer inhabit. But here's the psychological truth that no one warns you about. Numbness is not the absence of emotion. It's the exhaustion of emotion. It's the result of years spent carrying pain with no place to put it. Years of being needed but never understood. Years of being strong for everyone else, until there is nothing left for themselves. And when the emotional system burns out, it doesn't explode, it shuts down quietly. Like a store closing early without anyone noticing. This shutdown is dangerous, because it creates a person who appears functional but is psychologically fading. They go through the motions. They show up. They smile. They say the right things. But inside, everything is muted. Food tastes dull. Music feels flat. Conversations feel scripted. Life feels like a movie they're watching through glass. And no one ever asks the one question that could uncover everything they've been hiding. Are you still in there? Because the truth is, these people don't want attention. They don't want drama. They don't want pity. They want connection. They want someone to see the truth without being told. They want someone to notice the quiet parts of their suffering, the silence, the distance, the slow drift inward. But the world only sees the smile. And so the numb keep smiling, hoping one day the emotion behind it will return. It doesn't. Not until they stop running from the emptiness and finally face the reasons that created it. There's a strange moment that happens to people who feel dead inside. When someone compliments them, most people light up. They feel seen, validated, appreciated. But these people, they freeze for half a second, not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for their mind to whisper, "If only you knew the truth." Because the compliment isn't landing on a real self. It's landing on a mask, a perfectly polished, well-practiced version of them that the world interacts with, while the real self sits quietly in the back of the room, like a ghost chained to the floor. And the more praise they receive, the worse they feel. Because every compliment becomes proof of the same painful reality. They don't love me. They love the performance. This is the tragedy behind the smile. Inside, they are exhausted. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's the exhaustion of someone who has been carrying their inner world alone for too long. Someone who can't remember the last time they expressed their real feelings, without fear of hurting someone, worrying someone, or being judged by someone. So they don't speak. They don't share. They don't open up. They continue smiling because it's easier. It's safer. It keeps the world running smoothly. And here's the twisted part. They've become so skilled at looking fine that even when they try to show they're struggling, people can't see it. Their smile has become a habit, a reflex, a shield. You can see it in the way they laugh at jokes that aren't funny, in the way they say "I'm good" a little too quickly, in the way they never talk about themselves, but always ask about you, in the way their eyes drift for a second when the room gets quiet, as if they were falling into a hole only they can see. People who feel dead inside don't want attention. They want relief. But relief requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust, and trust feels dangerous when you've spent years learning that your emotions are too much, inconvenient, or not worth listening to. So they stay silent, not because they want to, but because the world trained them to. Over time, this silence becomes its own kind of identity. They stop expecting to be understood. They stop expecting to be supported. They stop expecting anything at all. And yet, they still show up. They still help. They still smile. Not because they are strong, but because breaking down in front of others feels like a crime they don't have the right to commit. They don't want to disappoint anyone. They don't want to become a burden. They don't want to be the problem. So they hold it in, all of it, until the smile becomes muscle memory and the emptiness becomes home. What people don't understand is that feeling dead inside isn't the absence of emotion. It's the overload of unspoken ones, the kind that were never allowed out, the kind that accumulate in silence, the kind that slowly dim the inner world until even happiness feels like it belongs to someone else. But here's the strangest truth. Even in this emotional numbness, these people crave connection. They crave one moment, just one, where someone looks past the smile long enough to ask, "Are you really okay?" and mean it. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. People who feel dead inside don't break down in public. They don't scream. They don't collapse on the floor. They don't beg for help. They smile. And that smile becomes their last line of defense, the thin layer of paint covering the cracks in a collapsing wall. But inside, their entire inner world feels like a house where the lights went out a long time ago, and they keep pretending someone's still home. The final stage of this psychology is not pain. It's emotional numbness. Most people think suffering feels like fire, but the people who feel dead inside have already passed the flames. What remains is the ash cold, silent, and strangely manageable, because numbness gives them something pain never could: control. When you can't feel much anymore, nothing can hurt you, nothing can disappoint you, nothing can surprise you. It becomes a twisted kind of safety, a quiet psychological bunker. But here's the part they'll never admit out loud. Deep down, they miss themselves. They miss the version of them that used to laugh without faking it, love without fear, cry without shame. They miss feeling something, anything with intensity. And that longing is the first spark of life returning. Because no matter how numb someone becomes, The human psyche always pushes toward wholeness. Even if it happens slowly, even if it feels impossible, even if they've convinced themselves they're beyond saving. People who feel dead inside don't need to be forced open. They don't need to be told to cheer up or be grateful, or just think positively. They need something far simpler and far rarer. Space to exist without pretending. A moment where they don't have to perform. A moment where they can say I'm not okay without feeling weak. A moment where their smile can drop without consequences. Because that's what begins the process of waking up inside. Not loud interventions. Not motivational speeches. Not forced optimism. Just honesty. The truth is, the real danger isn't that they feel dead inside. The danger is that they think they're supposed to. That this numb, muted version of life is all they deserve. But the people who smile while dead inside are not broken beyond repair. They're exhausted, emotionally overextended, stretched past the point where their nervous system can keep responding. And the moment they stop pretending, even for one breath, even in complete silence, their psyche begins to thaw. It begins quietly, a faint spark, a small flicker of warmth. But that is how the dead come back. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, gently, the way morning light returns after the darkest night. And one day, they look in the mirror and the smile isn't a mask anymore. It's real. It's theirs. And they didn't fake it this time. That is the psychology of people who feel dead inside and how they finally rise again.